going to let a few people load into here. I'm also going to share it with my followers. Get the word out a little bit. All right. Oh, the weight bot is so horrible. Let's turn the weight bot off. That's a terrible, terrible sound. I'm going to put on a little bit of my own music and let this play for just a second while I broadcast this out to the world, and then we'll get started.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Broadcast to the world.
Through my sleeping eyes, watch out for
All
simply
right, let's see.
not the only genius prize you'll find. Don't you like this kind?
All right, they fixed that glitch. Oh boy. All right. Okay, there we go. All right. Takes a minute to get all of the programming stuff done because you have to do it once you go live. And it's always fun. All right. Yeah, that's my husband's music and song. So I have permission to play that. Music by Dan Freeman. All right. We're going to do a quick introduction. You guys are at the Laughter After Trauma show, and this is a special day for me. So I hope we get a couple of people in here and going so that we can... yeah, right? You're about to go to sleep with Waitbot. I know. Oh, Waitbot is rough. So my name is Deanna. I'm the host of the Laughter After Trauma show, and I'm a speaker, educator, and coach that brings light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. I'm a thriver after intimate partner violence, and that led me on a journey to find the beauty and the laughter in healing. And so I believe we are all magic and we all have the ability to self-heal. It's all inside of us. We're the ones who do the work, no matter which place that you tap into, because we actually don't ever do it alone. And so that's why I kind of created this podcast and this show here on Fireside called The Laughter After Trauma, because it showcases everyday people who have triumphed in the face of trauma, providing hope. It provides awareness, connection, and community. And we all get to share the laughter after. So today's guest is a special guest that I met on Adventures by the Book. His name is Jesse Leone. I think I'm saying that right. And he is a social impact consultant to foundations and investors on ways to address issues of substance abuse, addiction, affordable housing, and mental health. And he is native English and Spanish speaker, but he also speaks Portuguese. I think that's really cool. All right. So he is based, or he is from San Diego. I don't know if you're still there, but I think so. And he is a graduate of UC Berkeley and Harvard. So we're going to get to hear a lot about his story in just 1 second. We're going to go ahead and bring him up to camera. Hey, Reagan, and hey, Truthful Sweet. So I just want to acknowledge a couple of people who are out here. And then the people who are listening out in Cyberland, or people who are watching the replay. So you guys, if you ever want to hear any of my shows live and get to meet the guests and participate and interact, come to the show live. That's the fun of Fireside. So, all right. So let's get started. This is Jesse, everyone, and he is an author of a book that I just got finished reading, like I said. Thank you. He is an author of the book. It's called I'm
I'm
Not
not
Broken.
broken.
There you go. And I used a little clip. I don't know if you saw the reel that I posted today over on Instagram. I know Instagram's not your biggest platform, but um, I do a lot of my promoting over there. And I posted, I swiped the video of you opening your box of books and pulling out like your first copies from the publisher. And I just thought it was just the most sincere thing I had ever seen. And it's just like you're opening it and you're like, oh my God, it's real. And you just laugh this great laugh. And I was like, this show's about laughter. So we need to put that in the reel.
That's what's up. I appreciate
It had
that.
to feel good. I have a book in me too. I don't know where or how to get it going, but I have one in me. I know it, and I've written pieces of it all over the place. So I need to get it together. But anyway, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about you because this book, for me, this book was something that was such a real and raw experience. But I also felt like it took me into a place in time and a place of culture that is something that I didn't really know and understand. And I love that when I get that out of a book, whether it's fiction or a memoir. So I read a fiction book that kind of brought me into that, but it was loosely based on an author's life and experience during the civil rights movement. And this is, of course, for your book, a memoir, which makes it even a little bit more heart wrenching. But I encourage everyone to read it because it is something that I think we all need to be aware of to be able to, I don't know, to be awake to the issues that are brought up in this book. So, you want to tell us a little bit about the book or your experiences, however you want to go through it with your story, so that people kind of understand without, I guess, knowing the whole book, because you guys need to go buy the book. You can get it anywhere you buy books. I got it from Adventures by the Book, of course, because I like to get the ones that she does. So, but you can get it anywhere. So tell us a little bit. First of all, tell us where you are now. Are you still living in San Diego?
I am in San Diego. I actually moved back right before COVID.
Hmm.
And it was interesting because it was one of those cities, we're talking about trauma and laughter after trauma. And this was one of the cities, when you read the book, obviously you understand why, right? So as soon as I would get off the plane and just smell the San Diego air, it's America's finest city, right? That's the
Right.
tagline for San Diego. Best weather, nice beaches, just had a lot of trauma for me. And
Hmm.
so I never thought I would want to move back.
Hmm.
And then I came back right before COVID to be closer to my mom, and COVID hit. And it just took a lot of healing. And I had written the manuscript of the book, but was having a hard time getting published.
Hmm.
And um, and then things started happening right alongside my healing, which I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the book journey. But yeah, I'm in San Diego. And I just want to say thank you for capturing that, because that's one of the videos that, so what, there's a, laughter after trauma. And I loved how you said I'm a thriver, because I always say I'm
Hmm.
not broken, I thrive.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
um, laughter means so much. And I had to learn how to laugh again.
Right.
And so
Hmm.
when people that know me and they hear that deep laugh coming from within, they're like, yeah,
Hmm.
that's Jesse's laugh. All right, he can't fake
That is what's up. Right,
that
right. I love it. Okay, good. Because the laughter, that laugh is very contagious. You have a nice, deep, rich voice, and when you started laughing, I was just like, that's definitely it. And I don't know you enough to know that, but I can. So I'm kind of like I really believe in energy and in frequency and vibes. And I just when I saw it, I was just like immediately I knew it was 100% real. And I was like, yeah, we're going to put that in the video. We're just going to steal a few things. It's fine.
I'm glad you did. I'm really glad you did.
Yeah. So, so Okay, so you're back in San Diego, and I know you've lived kind of in the Northeast for a bit too, right? Like around New York and stuff.
Oh, I've lived everywhere. So when I left San Diego, I don't even know if I should say the whole trajectory, but I mean, it's San Diego, LA, back to San Diego, Berkeley, Cuba,
Mm.
back to San Diego, Boston or Cambridge, New York, New York, Miami, Miami, Tampa, Tampa, Miami, Miami, Philly, Philly. Oh my gosh. San Diego, DC, LA, Denver, Tallahassee, back to yeah, it's been a lot of moving professionally. So I've been really blessed in that aspect is
Right.
having lived in different cities.
I love that. Okay. So let's get into the book journey a little bit because I want people to know there's some different aspects I think in here and people will really be drawn to them as you start talking about the book journey. And if I have questions, believe me, I'll stop you. But tell us the book journey because I know that writing is a healing process in and of itself. But then you said you couldn't get published and you needed to kind of have that healing come alongside everything falling into place. So talk to me about that. I want to hear about that.
So making a note of that. So I initially, and this chair is really squeaky, so I apologize.
Oh, I
Um,
sit on a ball. It's squeaky too.
so I initially didn't write the book with the intention of publishing it. I
Mm,
started writing, and I don't know if you've heard this story yet, but I started writing because there's a family member that was struggling with with anorexia and body issues.
mm,
And I, not in the book, and it was completely edited out. I was bulimic for a very long time,
oh, no, I didn't
and
hear this story.
body dysmorphia is huge,
Yeah.
and it's not talked about
Hmm.
among men, and it's not talked about in communities of color among men, let alone Latino communities.
Mm,
And so I wasn't given permission to speak to this family member about my journey. And so then one day I found out that this family member asked a question about my abuse, and it was farther from the truth than what really happened.
mm,
And so I got pretty upset. I said, hell nah. Ain't nobody going to be telling my narrative for me. This is my story to tell.
mm,
And I got really upset about other people telling my story and other people interpreting my journey.
mm,
You know, I've been in recovery 29 years, so I'm a public speaker. Um, but when you're in recovery, it kind of feels like a safe space. Now it's out in the public, right?
mhm,
So I initially wrote the book because I wanted to leave a documented story of not just my journey, but the journey of 2 to 3 generations of family on both sides, my mom's and my dad's,
mm,
of resilience, of struggle, of intergenerational trauma, how it's passed down, and how me, as a Latino individual in this country, born and raised here, my journey in breaking those chains of trauma and being able to move from being, in trauma to thriving. And
mhm,
so it happened that one day, I just started writing. And at the end of the day, I had about 700 pages of single spaced stuff. And kind of
wow.
like you said, you have a lot of different pages and stuff written. It took time for me to piece it together.
Right.
Fast forward, I moved. My father passed away. I moved, and I would spend hours at coffee shops writing until 1, 2 in the morning, and I'd have to be at work at 8. So I'd get
Mm,
off work, I'd go take my walk in the evening, and then I'd hit another coffee shop, and I'd start writing and piecing it all together and editing. And so then when I got ready to try to find an agent, and I'm going down this path in case there's any listeners that are interested in writing a book.
mhm,
So when you're trying to find an agent, you look up all the different agencies that are out there. You try to figure out what agents are interested in new authors and what their focus areas are. And mine hit all these different subject areas, right? And not everyone does memoir. I reached out with query letters to so many people, and it was rejection, 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 rejection. And I started losing hope. And
Do you
then
have a count? Do you have a count on how many rejection letters you got till you got that one accepted?
it was way, I mean, if I pulled up my query folder,
Hmm.
and there's days that I would scroll, 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 scroll over 100, and I
Hmm.
would just be like, wow. I had
Hmm.
somebody even say that my writing was mediocre at best,
Hmm.
and that no one would want to publish my story.
Wow.
And it
So,
hurt.
so again, just to your point, then the resilience that
You
you've
just don't
got,
give up.
right?
We don't give up.
Because you can sit here and look at all the generational trauma that comes from, what your families on both sides have been through, but you can also look at the part that you gained, right? And that resilience is something that you gained. It's something that you can have gratitude for, even though there were some things that weren't great that brought you to that. But you have it. It's like in your bones, and thank goodness you did it. Because look at anyway. Go ahead. All right. So I just had to add that real quick.
No, 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 I appreciate that. And that's very true. It's not giving up and not stopping.
Right.
And so I moved home to San Diego. I didn't know where my next phase of my life was going. I had this manuscript. I didn't have an agent. I knew that I wanted to publish. Um, and then one day, it's going to sound really corny. So I started listening to Deepak Chopra's 21 Day Meditations with Oprah, right? Oprah and
Oh my
him.
God, I love those meditations.
And so I was doing the 21 Day Meditation
Hmm.
Challenge. And I started taking a look at what was my intent in writing this book.
Mm.
And I went back to my initial intent, which it's not about making money. It wasn't about, it was about trying to inspire hope in others, especially other survivors, to not give up no matter how dark our lives can become,
Hmm.
especially when dealing with sexual trauma,
Hmm.
especially when with dealing with abuse, especially substance abuse, and the journey where that oftentimes takes us.
Hmm.
By the time I stopped getting high, I was 18. There weren't many young people of color knocking down the doors of recovery. And I
Right.
felt alone, and I felt like I couldn't do this by myself, but I had a whole community behind me. And I went back to my intention, and I remember saying a prayer at the beach. And I remember saying, my intentions of writing this book are for A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And this is what I would like to give to the world.
Hmm.
And next thing you know, I swear it was very weird. Within a week or two, I get a call from someone in the Hollywood industry, and they decided to meet with me to learn about the book. And it was supposed to be a 20-minute meeting. It lasted 2.5 hours. And there were tears and there was emotions. A week later, I met with another Hollywood production company. And once again, okay, 15, 20-minute meeting, blah, blah. We'll just keep it short. It
Right.
lasted 2 hours, almost three, of just back and forth conversation about the journey. And the questions always came up. So, do you have an agent? Where are you in your literary process? I said, I can't find one. And I started
Mm.
crying. I
Mm.
said, no one wants to work with me to tell my story. Maybe it's too painful for people to read.
Mm.
And the woman said, I have somebody I want you to give a call to. He worked on the Jeffrey Epstein episode with Netflix, which is
Mm.
also about sex trafficking.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this Mexican man, who's also an author, read it, introduced me to his agent. And within 2 months, I was in a bidding war between two publishing houses.
You see, and so okay, and I just need to stop for a second because this is amazing, and I think this is where people, I know it's where stop. I stop myself, right? Because you think, like, oh, I tried, 10 times, and it just didn't happen, and I've even looked at like self-publishing. Maybe that's the way I could go, or whatever, but I'm not deep enough into it to have a manuscript yet. But the point is that you did not stop, and you
Hold on, let
set
me grab him real quick. Keep going. I'm listening to you.
okay, you set an intention into the universe. I don't care. And this is something else I love this because prayer is so powerful. But it is really what it is that you created an intention. And so while you look for that backing, you also created something internally that said, this is who I am and this is what it's going to be. And when you do that, it really does pull out that you start to see those opportunities. You just kept speaking it. You just kept speaking it. And the more you speak it, you're going to hit on the right place. I mean, you had to know that you had a little bit of something when you met with that first person for 15 minutes and it took 2 hours.
Right.
And then it happened again. So these people, and that's the other thing too. We always, I think I look out and I go, I don't know why this person or that person would want to come on my show or why they would want to talk to me. But I said, I'm just going to ask. And I get these yeses. I get them all the time. And it's because people want to help. People
You're
want to
one of the
help.
first people that reached out at the fireside chat with Susan Macbeth. And I
Yeah,
love that. I love what she does.
I do too.
And you were so genuine and you're right. I'm all about helping others. And so thank you for saying that.
Right. And it's not, like, yeah, I'm going to sit here and keep promoting the book because I think everybody does need to read it. But it's not, I know it's not about that, but I think your story is amazing. And so, like, if you don't mind, without going through your whole story, can you give us a few of the touch points of areas of pain that you had and the things that you kind of walked through to get to a place where you felt like this needs to turn around, and then we'll talk about the turnaround too. I don't
Well,
need
one of
all of it
the
because I want them to read your book.
you
But go
got
ahead.
it. You got it. Well, as
But as
you
much
know,
as you want to.
a lot of the feedback I get from people is, man, in reading your book, I get to a chapter and I'm thinking, all right, it's going to turn around now. Things
Hmm.
are going to look good. And then something else happens. And then I'm going to turn it around and this is your saving grace. And then something else happens. And what I loved what the book did is that it really, we captured beautifully my development. I was this loving, nerdy kid
Hmm.
who just loved being a mama's boy, loved cooking. And it wasn't trendy to be cooking in the kitchen as a young man of color. We didn't have, those cooking shows, right? I was supposed to be doing the things my older brother was doing. And I used to get picked on for being a nerdy little studious kid. And then the sex abuse began.
Hmm.
And I blamed myself.
Hmm.
And then when the authorities got involved, I by that time changed, and they put me in state mandated therapy.
Hmm.
And you would have assumed that once the state stepped in and my perpetrators disappeared, that I was 14 years old, that I would have gotten back on track
Hmm.
after weekly therapy sessions.
Hmm.
And I didn't. She knew about the sex abuse. She knew about the sex abuse. She knew about the substance use. She knew about the prostitution. She knew that I was a child, an exploited child, a childhood that was a child that was sexually exploited. You know what I mean? I was a
Hmm.
sex worker at 14.
Right. Right.
That's not a sex worker. You're
Right.
being exploited as a kid.
Right.
And
Right.
so she knew about all that, and she knew about the drug use. And not once did she recommend drug and alcohol treatment. Not
Right.
once did she ask to meet with my parents for family therapy. She didn't understand the importance of culture and family. All I was a
Okay.
steady.
Right. And the thing is, too, you actually asked for your family to get involved at some point.
Yeah.
Didn't you mention to her that? And she was like, no, that's not necessary. Something with your age that didn't need to happen or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Hmm.
she never did. And so no child should be left to have to maneuver the public health or mental health system by themselves.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
when you asked about what were those turning points, I think that the turning point of the hope that therapy would one day help was that thing I was holding on to. But I became that class clown. I was that kid that was always causing trouble in school. I was that popular kid that was always cutting a fool, and I was
Hmm.
cutting up. And then everything took a really bad turn. I
Hmm.
turned deeper into drug addiction and street prostitution, and until one day I met a girl. I was straight at the time, and I met this girl on our way to a rave, and Hope, and she saw right through me, and she threw the yellow pages at me, and she said, "You need some help." And she took me to my first NA meeting, and
Hmm.
I didn't get clean right away. And there weren't.
She actually needed some help too,
Oh yeah, yeah. So she's
right?
still, yeah, and she's still clean. We still
Hmm.
talk.
That's awesome.
She's a blessing in my life, and she's one of the most important people in my life. And my mom loves her. Um, she took me to my first meeting,
Hmm.
and she stayed clean right away.
That's
And,
great.
and what I love about her is she was one of those people that gave me hope. And then I got a sponsor.
Yeah.
And my last night using, I wanted to kill myself.
Hmm.
As you saw in the book, I went through a really horrific experience that I talked about it, and I needed to talk about it in detail to get it out of me. I'm sure it was really difficult to read. It was difficult to write. But one of the things about trauma informed care is not reliving what you experienced, to be
Right.
able to talk about it. And my sponsor picked up the phone my last night using, and I was blessed. I had these moments of magic where people would come into my life at exactly the right time and guide me in the right direction. That helped me become the man that I am, of giving back to community. I care about policy issues around, access to mental health, culturally competent mental health therapists. I believe in life coaches. you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I think that what you said, and I think people need to understand this, and especially if you've ever had any trauma in your life, is to make sure that whoever you're working with is trauma informed. I have some training in that arena because I specifically in my coaching work in that arena. It's not the only people I work with, but it's what I specialize in. And so you need to have that behind them. Now, I'm not a therapist, so I don't discourage that either. I think they work very well together because therapy helps you recognize those triggers, and if you get trauma informed therapy, it's going to help you take you from the flashback of living in that moment to creating that moment as a memory so that you can disconnect from that, just like all the other memories you have in life, and be able to talk about it or, write about it, or if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine, but you're not reliving it, like you said. I think coaching, on the other hand, helps you set some very specific things in place now and thinking about where you want to be. It's more about intention,
Yep.
right? Like the intention when you went on the beach, right? It's about that part of it. It's about the moving forward part. And I think they work very beautifully together. But just know that if you've ever had those experiences and you've tapped into therapy and you go, oh, therapy doesn't work, you weren't in the right place.
Right.
You
And
weren't
one
in
of
the
the
right.
things that I do as a coach is, and it's very different because I start my sessions with setting certain parameters and boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
say, look, this isn't therapy. And, this isn't counseling. This is a coach. The answers are all within you. And my job is to pull those answers out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a skill set. And I've had some amazing coaches that have, helped me pull those answers out from within me, to help me in my journey.
Right. And I like to, because when people don't understand what that is, I say it's just a personal trainer for your life. The personal trainer can't do the work. They have the resources though that you need, and they know how to pull out of you what's going to work best for you. But you are the one guiding the ship.
Right.
You're the one steering that ship. So yeah, it's really cool. So let me ask you about one character in the book that I really loved. I loved your mom, so we're gonna come back to her in a minute.
Hmm.
But I want to ask you about this character, Ariel. I know that she was like through here. She was really one of those characters. She's not a character because the book is not fiction. She is one of those people in your life. Like she was there from the beginning. Hope came in and kind of she didn't pull any punches. But I think Ariel, if I'm saying her name correct, I think that she also was someone who stood by you, but also encouraged you along the ways that you needed to go, or drew her lines and her boundaries when she needed to at times.
Yeah.
Is she still in your life?
So, yes, she's still in my life. She's still my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
We met at the football game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Her mom, Joy, in the book, passed away
Mm.
right before my dad did, right
Okay.
around the time I started writing the book. And yeah, she's still in my life. And she's one of those people that saw me go through every single aspect of my identity, the challenges that I went through. Her mom made her set some very strict boundaries at different times that I talk about in my book. But yeah, no, we're we're she just surprised me at a book signing that I had in northern San Diego in Carlsbad. Yeah, we're
Oh.
still we're still tight and thick as thieves. I picked her name because I couldn't use Ariel from The Little Mermaid, right? I
Right.
didn't want to go down that path of getting sued. So I try to figure out a way to use, basically Ariel, but in a different form.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we saw The Little Mermaid together, it messed me up. That song, Part of That World or Part of Your World,
Uh,
I was in the grip
mm,
of the sexual abuse and the drug
mm,
addiction.
mm-hmm.
And she didn't know anything. People didn't know what was happening. And so when I saw that cartoon and that one scene, um, I just felt like a part of me was longing to be a part of the normal world.
Mm,
Why couldn't I? I just
mm-hmm.
wanted to leave the world, the life that I was living and live out. I wanted to be able to rollerblade. I wanted to like skateboard. I wanted to do the things that all these other kids were doing. And
Mm-hmm.
why not me?
Mm-hmm.
Why was I trapped in this world that I just didn't want to live in anymore? And
Right.
so the reason I picked the character was because that's one of the most impactful moments was when me, her mom, and her aunt went to go see The Little
Mm.
Mermaid.
Well, that is a great backstory. I'm gonna have to jot that down and put that like in a note in the book just so that it's there for generations when they come back to reading it because that's great. I love that. Um, and I do think too, like the way things hit us at different times in our life, and for you with all the things that you went through when it came to this, uh, you know, and this is something I really think people need to be aware of because as a child, when you go through this, number one, you think you have some control over this or that
Right.
somehow you caused it. So that's the first part. And then the second part, because you're fully controlled and because it is manipulative and because, you are pulled into a situation where authority figures are actually preying on you, you don't know how to tell somebody.
Right.
And I do think that as adults, as people who are in situations of responsibility, like teachers, they or this healthcare professional that you were with, I know that there was some things that happened for you that wound up bringing that particular area to the public, right? Like to the authorities. And it's kind of what, sort of ended that situation because they fled, but you were so already kind of messed up and deep into things that you didn't see your way out of it at that
It's
time.
sad that it took an extremely violent situation for people to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that violent situation was not something that I intentionally wanted to get into. It just escalated so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, it hasn't been until the last year and a half to 2 years that I've heard people say, and it's what we do in trauma informed care, it's how you frame the questions. For too long, you hear, "What's wrong with you? Why are you
Mm-hmm.
acting like that?" You don't hear, "What happened to you?" You don't hear, "What's happening to you?"
Mm-hmm.
You can talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't ask the questions.
Right.
And they assume that as soon as you're done with the statement, they don't pause to see what's going to come after. Kind of like the
Right.
semicolon, right? For folks that have had suicidal ideations and have experienced that, where people don't often listen to what comes next.
Right.
And sometimes those of us that are in trauma throw something out there, and we kind of wait for a reaction.
Right.
Then we'll feel it out a little bit more. And then we'll kind of wait for a reaction. And so creating that sense of safety.
Right. And that's what I was getting ready to bring up is the safety aspect, because when you're in that trauma and you throw that out, what you're looking for is to figure out if you're in a safe space, if this is the place where I can finally unburden some of this. And if you don't get the recognition, the response, the listening, the reading between the lines, the energy that you need to have feedback to you to say, yes, you're in a safe place. Yes, I am a trusted person. Yes, you can talk to me or you can open and say something. Then it gets you feel shut down and you just keep feeling more and more of that shutdown. So one of the things I think that everybody needs to really pay attention to and be aware of is if you're in a situation where you notice, especially in young children and teenagers, some pattern or change in who they are or how they're acting, be very curious but careful and aware of how you approach it so that that person can be open. It may be nothing, but it's very unusual for a child to be studious and a straight A student and want to be in the kitchen and helping with mom and a mama's boys to click and just go completely opposite of that. That
Right.
is a behavior that should be, you know,
There were some
uh,
warning signs that could have been. And so the hard part about it is that when you come from an immigrant family and you're exposed to a whole new culture
mm,
and there's things happening in society, like at that point in time, there was, the era of gang violence, right? And
right, right,
so, there was this societal pressure. The reality was for me in my book was that situation after that violent outburst, which is when the authorities got involved, and I basically told the officer what was happening,
mm-hmm,
it destroyed the family.
mm-hmm,
I felt that I destroyed my mom's life.
mm-hmm,
No one was there. There was no therapist to help. I mean, imagine, and I don't want anybody to imagine this, but I tell people, like, imagine your 14-year-old kid telling you this, But imagine it. Imagine that 14-year-old kid being, you're an immigrant and you don't even speak English right. And your kid is that bilingual but doesn't speak English great and doesn't speak Spanish perfectly and is trying to tell you that something's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no one there to help facilitate that conversation. There's no professional.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of the hardest scenes in the book to read in the audiobook.
And something you brought out in there too, and I haven't listened to the audiobook, so
Oh my gosh, the
I will
audiobook
definitely go
is
because I
insane.
am a junkie for audiobooks and I always get both. So, um, but one of the things you said in there is there's not really a Spanish word.
There's not a Spanish word for molest.
Right,
Molest is like molestar, which means to bother.
right.
So I'm this 14-year-old kid trying to explain to my mom without a social worker present, without a counselor present, without the police officer just dropped me off with a stack of papers for my mom to sign to get me into the state sanctioned program for mental health therapy.
Which you knew
And
you were required to do, so you had no choice. You had to
I
get
had
this
no
done.
choice. Otherwise, and so it was trying to find the right words to tell a parent.
Mm-hmm.
No kid should be forced to have to figure out a way to tell their parent on their own,
Mm-mm.
sent home by the social worker, the counselor, the principal, the police officer, left on your own to tell your parent that you're being sexually abused.
Mm-mm.
And so I could unpack that so many different ways as to why that occurred and how it occurred the way it did. But I just choose not to go there because it's my job is to make sure that I educate. What I'm looking to do is that I work in the field of philanthropy. And I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard, the Kennedy School of Public Policy, to help create programs and to educate mental health therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists of my journey and my story of how
Mm-hmm.
the system I fell through the cracks. And
Mm-hmm.
luckily, I had a girlfriend who took me to my first NA meeting. But a lot of people have no clue what recovery is. They don't know
Right,
that there's a way out.
right, right.
And so,
And
go ahead.
and they don't always think that that tapping. So like I would venture to say that most people have heard of AA and NA and still don't think that that's actually a viable real option. They think it's something that you're forced to do if you get arrested because
Right,
you were found with something on you, and so you
right,
have a
right.
DUI or
You
DWI,
go
and you
and
got to go, and you got to go because they don't realize that it's a legit group of people that have come from where you are and have your back and really create that that community that you need to have to be able to get through something, and it takes a community. So when I talk about self-healing, I say, yeah, it's all inside of you. Just as a coach says, you have what you need inside of you to do what you need to do, and we have to pull that out. But on the same token, nobody does it alone.
right,
You have to have
right.
people in your corner.
It was funny. Somebody sent me, and I didn't know that Malcolm X said this, and I remember reading Malcolm X's book, and when you replace the I in illness and you replace it with we, it becomes wellness. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, I like that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's about we. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do anything alone.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that I've been able to achieve from getting clean to community college to being encouraged to go to cosmetology school because I was a hairstylist for a long time. And I worked full time at the hair salon while I was going to Berkeley and while I was going to Harvard. And so, that's a lie. Sorry, I didn't work at a hair salon at Harvard. I did hair in my apartment to make extra money. But, it's one of those things where I didn't do anything alone.
Mm-hmm.
It was people constantly supporting me on my journey and cheering me on. And even when I wanted to give up, they didn't let me. Just
Mm-hmm.
like this book. Even when I received all those hundreds and hundreds of rejection letters, there were still people in my corner saying, your story needs to be told, man.
Right.
Your
People
stories
need
of
to hear it.
survival. Your stories
Mm-hmm.
about healing. Your stories about going from just surviving and trying to stay alive to like literally thriving and impacting other people's lives, and that other people can too.
Right. That's the whole point. And I think that all of what you went through to try to get this published was something you needed to go through so that the timing of when you published it was right. Because I think coming out of this pandemic, whatever it was, and or if we're out of it, I don't even know if we're out of it, but coming out of it and trying to get back to work and life and traveling and whatever things, that everybody has some level of trauma, but everybody wants to connect again. And the way you connect with people is to say you're not alone. This is what I did. This is what I went through. And if I can, you can.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I do this show. It's not I'm not making money sitting here. I'm not. I do this show because I really have a heart to say, if I can, and I can tap into, I have no loss of people that have come on this show and talk with me. No loss. Next month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I do a show once a week, and it's filled. It's been filled for 2 months. And it's strictly with people who've experienced that, so there's no shortage of people who are willing to come out here and say, here's what I did. Here's what I did. 2 days ago, I had somebody who doodled her way to healing. She taught herself how to letter and doodle, and now she teaches it as a form of meditation and mindfulness.
That is so
What?
funny because
Right.
so I've been pulled into HR meetings, um, and I can go down the path once again and unpacking as to why that occurred, but I oftentimes I have to write. I had to write in a coffee shop. I can't be in libraries even to study. It's too quiet for me. Um, and probably because it reminds me of that back storage room where the sex abuse occurred. Wow, that was a really interesting epiphany at this exact moment
That's
that I
interesting.
never thought about that before and making that connection now.
Yeah, just
But I
shelves
doodle.
full of things and quiet back there, secluded.
I doodle to pay attention. It helps me and it helps me focus. And when I'm meditating, sometimes I will doodle. And some people have said, "Are you scribing?" I'm like, "No, I'm not scribing. I'm not. No, I'm not engaging in any of that. I'm trying to get connected with self." And
Hmm.
so, yeah, doodling is extremely important. I don't even know what the whole point of that was,
Well,
but
look, we can go down all the rabbit holes, but what I would love to do is send you one of her. We'll talk after this because I want to send you one of her journals, and I think you will really get such a kick out of that. So I'll send that to you. But
you know what? That's probably something, that people should consider too. Like there's all these different forms of, there's graphic novels that talk about people doing their memoirs in a graphic novel format. There's ways to tell people stories, and our stories need to be told.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think releasing that, I feel like probably putting your stuff into writing is probably cathartic. It was probably, now it's out. And then once it got published, you're like, wow, it's going to be out there. Then it's out there. Now it's out there. And while there's got to be a part of you that was like, oh, I'm putting it out there. There's got to be a
Oh
part
no,
of you
I
even. Go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say there has to be a part of you even still that was just like yet another release when that got put out. Just it's out there. Was it?
There's a lot of fear.
Hmm.
The release was there. It was extremely cathartic to write and just write, and the whole journey of writing, because I've always been, since I got clean and sober, I've been a journaler. I've been journaling, and even when I didn't want to write, and I talk about it in my book, because I would open my notepad and I would put the date, and I would say I don't want to write today, and
Hmm.
oftentimes I would follow it up with because blah 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 blah. So it would help me get in the mode of writing,
Hmm.
and so there's days that I still feel extremely vulnerable for doing what I did.
Hmm.
And Um, and I don't know how to ask for help. I don't know how to say, you know, I don't know how to get the book in front of so and so. I don't know how to get the book to be required reading for psychology, social work, criminal justice, um, education courses for community colleges and universities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to ask for help to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm learning to.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I feel really raw and I feel really exposed. And I question why I did what I did. So the whole journey of how I got published and everything starting when I went back to what my intention was,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because when I get in that frame of mind, it never fails. Someone will text me or send me a message on Instagram and they or Twitter and they'd say, I just finished your book. Oh my God, I read it on the plane to Germany and it really meant so much to me. Thank you for telling your story. It was hard to read, but the hope that you gave me and that transformation that you did lets me know that, you know what, that transformation is possible for me. So when I go back to my intention, all that negative self-talk, that self-deprecating bullshit that runs through my fucking ears sometimes, wow, excuse my language, I
That's okay.
apologize,
I think we're all
goes
grown
away.
ups.
It goes away.
Yeah. And I think, okay, so I do 5 keys to feeling at home within yourself. And the reason I did this, I did it for me, right? Because I felt like, the things that I went through, you get stifled when you're in trauma. You get stifled, and then you're suppressing yourself all the time, and whatever that is, you don't know how to make decisions. You don't know who you are really. Like, you remember that kid that you used to be, or you remember these things, and you catch glimpses, but you've come so far from there. And I think one of the things, my third key, is that mixed reel. I call it a mixtape, right? You can call it a soundtrack. You can call it whatever you want. It's that narrative that's just constantly rolling. We talk to ourselves more than anybody else, and we are our own worst critic. So being able to pull that into awareness and reframe those things is so important, you know? But on your journey, on top of that, you have such, and this is another thing, people set intentions, right? Because on your journey, what makes you get past that, and this is something that can help anybody, we talk about, what is your why? It's like a big trend now. You need to know your why. Well, your why is your intention, right? It's the
Right.
thing behind it's what's behind what you do. There has to be a reason that you want to do it. Otherwise, you will not maintain. You will not sustain it. Willpower doesn't sustain things. And motivation is an internal job. So you have to have a big, big reason, or it's not going to happen. And your reason was huge. It was so grand. And that's why I think it's here, right? But when your intention brings you up to that place, I think people really feel it. Just like I said, when I felt that smile and that laughter when you did your video, when you unboxed it, there's no way that when you tap into that and you reframe and get back to that place, it's why it connects with people, because they know that this is something that you're so passionate about, that you're the one that's going to help people with this. And I
What
believe
I
that.
love about what I love about your work is, you know, laughter after trauma. And I remember, wow. So one of the things I've had to learn how to do is how to sit down and write down memories to help me live in joy.
Mm,
Because living a joyful life is one of the things I aim for. And it's not easy for me when I'm pulled in so many different directions. And so I had to go back and really write down things and moments where that would bring me joy, that would make me
mm,
smile. And I remember like that first time, I think I was like 120 days clean. I had just finished kicking. I still would fidget all the time. I couldn't sit still. In meetings, I would constantly be shaking my legs and my hands. It took me 2 years to stop twitching from all the drugs that I did. And I remember one day at about 120 days clean, just laughing from my core, and I couldn't stop. And it was around a bunch of people, and we were laughing and having such a good time and thinking, wow, it's been so long since I
Mhm.
was able to really laugh.
Yep.
And being able to just laugh. Laughter is so key and important to me. So that video you pulled up, it's being able to go to those moments, and I gotta constantly pull those up for myself
Hmm.
when I get depressed, when I feel like I'm not on the right path, to remind myself that, you know what, I can laugh, and I can laugh at
Hmm.
myself too, and be like,
Right. It's probably the most laughter. That's where my laughter is. I know, when I was coming out of my situation, I had a friend on here on Fireside that wanted to do part of my story. And because I do Laughter After, she wanted to do something that specifically related to that. And so I remembered this story about, just us cracking up so much that I was going to die. And we laughed for so long. My face hurt, my side. I was sore the next day. I mean, it was a workout. Okay. And but I remember thinking, and she made me really think hard about this, but I remember thinking about it at that time, when I looked back on it the next day or 2 days after, and we were on a trip. Maybe it was when I got home. And I started thinking about this, and I was like, like it's not like I haven't laughed over these years, but I haven't laughed like that. And
right.
I can't even remember how long it had been. And when you pinpoint that moment, you realize that you connected back into something that you know you had lost.
And that was a thing because I had not really laughed. When you go through sexual trauma at 11 and a half years old and you're trapped in that world for so many years,
Hmm.
and then the substance abuse and everything else that came after, it's it was surreal. And I get those moments every once in a while where I just laugh from deep inside my soul and my spirit, or I hear my mom laugh,
Hmm.
and my mom has this very strong laugh, and so it's just empowering for self. And so, what do you do to get you in that place to just make you laugh and feel joy? Now I'm
Me
curious.
personally. Okay.
Yeah,
So for me, one of the things that I do the most is tap into things that I used to love when I was a kid. So, and I think that childhood is a big issue. And I think that's what brings us back to laughter fundamentally. So like I color, I might, roller skate, hula hooping. I love hula hooping, so stuff like that. But I did a video one time hula hooping, and I was just cracking up at myself because I did the video for, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I was probably doing it for a story or something on Instagram or Facebook. And I'm just laughing at myself because I look ridiculous. But I'm 50 years old, however old I was at the time. I'm 54 now. So whatever it was, and I could just, I'm like, oh, I can still hula hoop. Don't play, But a lot of times I think that I put myself into places with the people that I feel most comfortable with, that I know that when we sit down, I'm going to zone in and be present. And when I'm with those people, I know I'll laugh, whether it's my family or my friends. And I know that when I'm there and I'm not distracted by everything else, this is my happy place.
that is
So,
awesome. I swear,
and
that's
I do
awesome.
think, and I do think that that's again comes back to this community and connection, right? Peace that everybody needs, right?
Yeah. So one of the things I did a week ago or a week and a half ago, I don't even know how long it was now. I went to my first retreat for men healing from sexual trauma,
I
and
love
I've
it.
been in many retreats over the last 29 years of recovery. But it was the first time that it was specifically around the trauma and around specifically with men.
Mm-hmm.
And we had moments in this. It was a very structured environment, which I was
Mm-hmm.
extremely grateful for, all led by therapists with different modalities, trained in different modalities.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times that we were, playing. And it was really fun to like be a part of that healing journey. It's called Man Healing, and it's a great group. I wish I would have had a section in the book for resources for individuals. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's part of my next journey is to figure out a way to lift up organizations and places where people can go as part of their journey for healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, do it in a website, right? It's easy to add those kind of notes to a website, right? Just
Right.
links or whatever. But it's funny you said that. A friend of mine has put together a retreat that she asked me to be a part of, and this first one, which is June 6th, is going to be a women's retreat, and it's for caretakers, right? It's for empaths and caretakers, so nurses and teachers and moms, whatever. Maybe you're taking care of an elderly person, you're taking care of or aging parents, whatever. And we're doing the women's retreat first, then we're going to do a men's retreat, and then we're going to do a couples retreat. So we're piloting it this January 6th.
Wow. Nice.
So yeah, it's real exciting. We kind of have like a little list of people, kind of like they're not signed up because we don't have it live yet, but they want to be. So it's going to be really small. So, but it is going to have some parts of it that are structured, but some parts that aren't. It's at a bed and breakfast around a lake. So I think that's part of what you need too when you're there is to have some time to reflect and to have a
Right.
serene environment in which you can do that. So,
Definitely.
so
Definitely.
anyway, so that's all kinds of fun too. Okay, so listen, I don't want to keep you too long, and I know that you are caring for your mom. So I just want to say to people who are here and people who are listening, to keep in your heart and in your prayers his mom. His mom's going through some health issues, and he's been really doing a lot to do the book promotion and the book tour, and still be able to be there for his mom. So he's still a mama's boy. All
Thank you.
right.
Seriously, that means a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love that relationship with your mom. Thanks. In the book, I love the relationship with your mom and how you really let us see into the parts of it when you were younger, how you pulled away, but how you really always wanted to keep that connection, and how it all came back around, and how beautifully accepting she was of you, and how supportive she was of you, and going through all of these things when she found out. And so even with that cultural disconnection and the language barrier, I feel like she was still such a strong person in your life. So, and of course, I have a lot to say about moms because I have 2 kids, so whatever. And they're grown kids, and I know still how much it matters to me. So,
No, I'm you saying that is validation for me that I captured that part of my mom's journey. And I was someone someone kind of criticized me because she said, not everyone has that relationship with their mom. And I said, I'm sorry. It's my story. And this was my journey with my mom. And it was such a big piece for me.
hmm
And there was a lot of healing that had to be done around that too. But how she, I know I'm resilient. How she did it, I have no clue.
right.
She's,
There's
yeah.
something that takes over in that situation, in a parent or a mom situation. Something else takes over. I don't know how it happens either, to be honest. I don't think I do it as good as my mom. She has some kind of energy that I don't know. It's different. I don't know. Maybe I'll get it at some point, but I try. But no, I think that's the truth, and I think you captured it well. And the fact that other people don't have that. Dr. DeMartini wrote a book called The Gratitude Effect, and in there, he brings out a point that I think is pretty poignant, and that is that whatever mentor and whatever role that you need to be filled will always be filled for you. So if you're lacking that female role model or mentor or mom relationship that you didn't get from your mom, be open, because you will get that relationship somewhere else. You'll find it in a teacher, in a aunt, uncle, well, maybe uncle,
Yep.
and but you'll find those relationships elsewhere, and they will fill those roles, even if it's for a temporary amount of time. Those roles will be available to you if you stay open, and that's one of the things that he brings out, and that's why he says you got to remain in gratitude. Um, his book is pretty amazing, so there's that anyway. All right, so here's what I want to do before we get off. If anybody on here would like to jump up, ask a question, just say hi and meet Jesse. By all means, jump on up here and let me, just invite yourself up, and I'll accept. And if you're shy or it's not good timing, that's okay too. I know it's kind of late. My niece is on here right now. Reagan is my niece, just so you know, sitting down
Hey,
there in the
Reagan.
audience. But she's old enough to hear all of this. Okay, so what I'd like for you, while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions about anything or just wants to say hi, your last few pointers, right? We talked about this before, like 2, maybe 3 things that you would say, I want you to go home with these nuggets and be encouraged by this. These are the things that help me most, whatever. 3 takeaways, 2 takeaways.
Wow. The biggest takeaway for me, which we've been talking a lot about the writing the book process, is if you have the desire, maybe this is up to you, right? If you have a desire, an idea, a dream of one day telling your story, don't let no one get in the way of doing it. We all have a story to tell. And don't I couldn't listen to the noise. I It oftentimes takes over, but I have to find the right practices for myself to get beyond the noise. So don't lose sight of that dream. If you want to write your story, write your story. And for me, it was about what my intent was. The other is, and I'm glad you said this, is learning how to laugh. And I've been so stressed out lately with everything that's happening that you just reminded me to kind of just stay in the moment and stay in gratitude. So no matter what, I try to find gratitude in whatever situation I'm in. And then third is, just because I didn't have something doesn't mean it couldn't come in the form of something or somebody else.
Right.
And my relationship that I wanted with my father, I found through other people in my life. And so taking time for me, taking time to laugh. And what I want to do, and this is one thing that came up in this conversation, and I thought about it at the retreat, is maybe I need to have some game nights with
Yeah.
friends and maybe have my mom come over. Maybe I'll find
Yeah.
some Spanish board games or some Spanish, games that me and my friends can just play and laugh. Because
Yeah.
I'm not doing that enough in my life. And
Yeah.
when I was doing that, there was just so much laughter.
Right. And it elevates everything, even on a chemical level in your body. And so if there is any ways that you tap into it, for sure, just do that. I totally remember when we did game nights. That's another thing we did when we were kids. That, like, if somebody, I'll tell you, we do a family dinner once a month where I have as many people who want to come over can come over. It's not just family. We feed everybody, and then afterwards, inevitably, and now it has just become a practice, is we do karaoke. And it is so much fun, just, we forget that fun is a key element in our lives. So,
Yeah.
just keep that in there too. Find the harmony. We all have to work. We all have to have our families, but we all have to make sure we're incorporating and taking that time to fill our cups. So,
Yeah. Big time.
with laughter.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And
And
I
for
appreciate so much for you coming and spending your time with me. And I'm not going to keep you any longer. I want to tell you, I see you and you are beautiful. I believe that wholeheartedly. You're an amazing person. The work that you're doing is amazing. If you're in New Orleans, look me up. You have my email now and my info.
when they do
Reagan. Reagan says Leonard karaoke. I call it Leonard because we're not together enough to make it for lunch, but it's too late for dinner, so we do Leonard.
Leonard.
So she's laughing about that. So,
Awesome.
and she's an amazing singer, so I try not to sing after her. I try to sing before her. Anyway, lots of talent. Anyway, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna throw up some music, you guys. In the show notes, when I'm finished this, in the description, I will put up Jesse's link to his book page, and you guys can go check it out. And he is on Twitter. I think that's where you're most active.
Twitter and
Yeah.
LinkedIn are probably my two most, but LinkedIn is
Okay.
more on the professional side. Book side, Twitter, yeah.
There you go. Y'all can go chat it up over there if you want to hit him up about any questions and ask him
I'm
any further
slowly,
questions.
I'm slowly building up my Instagram. I never did social media before, and it's funny because I just posted my hairless cat yesterday, and it's so funny how that seemed to have gotten way more hits than anything else.
Yeah.
So
Cat videos. Who knew?
yeah.
Who knew that would be a thing? But yeah, so here we are with that, right? All right. Well, anyway, so that's all we have. We're going to wrap this up. I'm going to let you get back to, yourself, your mom, whatever you need to get done. And again, I appreciate you coming here. If there's anything ever I can do for you on your side, tap into me. I'm
We're
perfectly
gonna stay
happy
in
to do
touch,
anything.
and thank you
Yes.
for having me out here today. It really means a lot, and gracias.
Oh, gracias. De nada. I only know a little bit. All right. Thanks a lot.
All
I'm
right,
going to play some
thank
music.
you. Got it. Bye.
Bye bye.
Coffee, kitchen cups, grinding weights.